Okay. Hello, Andrea.
Hello, Kevin.
So good to see you again.
I know, you too.
It is always a pleasure to interview you. You're an absolute mentor, somebody I look up to enormously. You've affected my trajectory of my life and the trajectory of my healing, and your work is so admirable, and I appreciate you. So thanks for hopping on with me.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me and for hosting these important conversations.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely important in this time when there's a lot of uncertainty,
Yes,
and uncertainty plus this feeling of not being in control. That's where fear comes from, in my experience. And so we'll be talking about that. But why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
yeah, sure. I'm a functional medicine nutritionist, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Functional Nutrition Alliance and the Functional Nutrition Lab. So we train practitioners around the globe in the science and art of the functional nutrition practice. We also have a virtual clinic. So we practice what we preach all around and really dive in deeply to food as medicine so that we can look at where diet and lifestyle modification make a huge impact on outcomes. And Kevin, I just have to say that there's no better time than this one that we're in to both show where there's a gap in healthcare, but also if we go upstream and think about the people who are most susceptible to the virus, there's diet and lifestyle modification that could have happened there to lessen the risk of those individuals. So I think there's just a really global conversation that we get to have now, in addition to the acute situation we're in.
Absolutely. And what this entire situation has really brought forward is that we are responsible for our health. And there's no better time than right now to take control of what we can take control of. And we're going to talk a lot about that, about our circle of influence, what
Yes,
we are in control of. So we may still have this uncertainty.
yes,
At least we know that we're in control of the things we're in control of.
absolutely.
So something I've been asking everybody who's coming on these empowerment series talks is, number one, what is a virus?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I think that we are often really empowered by understanding what it is we're dealing with. Know the enemy is an empowering way to encounter this. And I did a lot of work to understand what a virus is, but also to understand what this particular virus is. And I've been writing about it in the realm of being a parasite. And people have come down and said, like, it's not a parasite, because I think we think of parasites in a very limited way, like some kind of worm. But a parasite actually means that it dines at the table of another. And that is what this virus is doing. So it has an RNA center surrounded by a lipid bilayer with pointy spikes of the crown around it, protein spikes, and it gets into our system through droplets that get into our mucous membranes. And the body actually mounts an immune response through phagocytosis to gobble up that virus, but the spikes get into those cells and start to replicate through the connection between the RNA and DNA, and that's how it's replicating. It is self-limiting. So the viral replication is self-limiting. What we want to enable to be self-limiting is the immune response. So the immune response should go on the attack and come down, and that's where we're seeing the problems. So this coronavirus is that crown, and that lipid bilayer is really important for when we think about washing our hands, because the soap really does dismantle that lipid bilayer and help us to dismantle it and get rid of it as much as we can when we're touching things.
Got you. So The crown. What is the crown?
The crown are proteins that are that are spiking into our cells and kind of tricking them through phagocytosis happening to engulf it, but then it's helping the RNA from the virus connect to our DNA for self-replication. So dining at the table of another, this virus doesn't live very long, that's always relative, on its own. So it's not alive by itself like a bacteria, it's taking the host to replicate. So part of what we don't know, and that makes the times uncertain, is how long it can live outside of a host. How long does it live in the air? How long does it live on different surfaces, our tables or the subway pole? You know, those are the things that are still being discovered even now. And I think we're getting more and more information all the time. But that's what leads us to this realm of uncertainty. There are just so many unknowns, and we don't have a solution for when somebody has been infected. So those are the things. Again, it's not that the virus itself is deathly, it's that we don't have a way of limiting the inflammatory response, and we don't fully understand its activity, where it's going to be most prevalent, who is most susceptible. And I don't know if you've talked about the R naught. So the R naught is how quickly something can transmit from, or not necessarily quickly in terms of speed, but how much one person will infect another person. So the R naught for the coronavirus is still unknown. It's suspected, last I looked, to be about 2.7, 2.4 to 2.7, meaning that's how many people can be infected by one person. By comparison, if we look at the measles, for which we do have a vaccine, the R naught is about 12 to 18 people. So there's a lot of ability to spread that from one person to others through the air. And the R naught of the flu, I think, is 1.2 to 1.4. So we're seeing that range of that ability for one person to spread to others, but we're still in the new and unknown in relation to this particular strand of this particular virus. Kevin, another thing that I've seen that people don't understand is that the coronavirus, or the SARS coronavirus 2, is the disease, it's the infection state, I should say, and the COVID-19 is the disease. So it's like HIV is to AIDS as coronavirus is to COVID-19. So I'm seeing them used interchangeably, but one is the actual virus and one is the actual condition.
Okay. Yeah, and as far as the R naught and the contagiousness of this virus, you know, we've been talking to several people, and with Dr. Vasquez, the which is, you know, just an aside. Dr. Vasquez is a mentor of both of ours,
Yes.
and Dr. Vasquez was saying, you know, there's debate about whether a virus is alive or dead. Like, it used to be thought it was alive, and then it was like definitely not alive, and then now it's like somewhere in between. And the bottom line is, it's not, it doesn't have the machinery in its cell that living cells have. So it uses other living cells in order to function, in order
Yes.
to be alive, right? So
Yes.
so as far as it living on a surface, it's not really living on the surface, but it is encapsulated by the lipid bilayer.
Yes.
And when we wash with soap, that emulsifies that lipid bilayer, and it dismantles the infectious ability of it. The other thing that Dr. Vasquez said that I really liked is, you can't say the word contagious without recognizing and respecting the fact that it's a relationship, right?
Beautiful.
The prefix con means with
Yes.
it means a relationship.
Yes.
So looking at this, then we're looking at what can we do to empower ourselves, because we have this
Yes.
virus and we have us, the potential host.
Yes.
And us as the potential host can do several things in order to empower ourselves to be strong and to not spread the virus. So there's a circle of influence, which I know we're going to talk about.
Yes.
Tell me what's one thing that you want to touch on about that right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a big fan of a mental model, what's called a mental model. And a mental model is just that we have frameworks to think into the unknown. And the reason I'm a fan of the mental model is because in functional nutrition and functional medicine, we are often working with cases that aren't easily solved, the 20% that take that extra work. And we need ways to think into that so that we know where to go. Otherwise, we're at a complete loss. We're reliant on a sheet of paper that says, for this condition, do this, and then we're stuck because that doesn't always work. And one of the mental models that I'm going to share today is not my own. It's Stephen Covey's mental model, but I've merged it with one of my own mental models, and it's the model of the circle of influence. And Stephen Covey was the guy who wrote The Habits of the Highly Successful People. And it is really successful people who do embrace mental models in a time of uncertainty or when we're faced with unknowns. And I want to have a call to action for us all to embrace mental models right now. It's not just one thing that we do. So here's the circle of influence. Inside, if you want to draw this in your mind's eye, we have the circle of control. Right now, we have very little control. Outside of the circle of control, we have the circle of influence. And outside of the circle of influence, we have the circle of concern. And right now, we're really stuck in that circle of concern. We're all running around with so much concern. And the truth that Stephen Covey showed us with this model is that when we sit in our circle of influence, we actually expand our influence. When we sit in our circle of concern, we actually shrink our influence. So let me just give you an example in relation to the coronavirus and COVID-19 and its contagiousness. If we sit in our circle of influence in the ways that I've outlined, that we'll talk about today, we not only expand our own ability to be resilient, our own resiliency, but we also expand the impacts on our society, on our culture, on our family, on our communities, on our audiences. So we act as an example and take this responsibility, this personal responsibility that also extends to social responsibility. We expand our circle of influence. If we think about this in relation to some of the institutions that have made decisions like schools, they are not having a population that is getting very sick or having many issues, but they took an institutional responsibility for institutional liability to make a stance, to send kids home. My kids home from college. Kids are home from grade school and high school and junior high school, and they're not the population that's getting very sick. But we don't know about that or not. We don't know if they are carriers. And so we're all taking a social responsibility to expand our circle of influence in containing the spread of this condition. If we just sit, on the contrary, in our circle of concern, we're losing sleep, we're not eating well, we are stressing more, and all of those things shrink our circle of influence personally, because all of those things negatively impact our immune function. And therefore, we are shrinking our ability to actually make a difference by having that impact on the others around us. So this is the circle of influence that we can be sitting in. And I've outlined what we can be doing in relation to the immune system that I'm happy to share with folks here.
This is beautiful. It ties so much into my analogy of our brain is our garden, our thoughts is the seeds, our attention is the sunlight and water, and what we give our attention to, those pathways grow, those those plants grow, they strengthen, they get stronger, and the thing is, our attention is the currency of our neurology, which
Yes.
makes the currency of everything. So when you're talking about the circle of influence versus the circle of control, if we're giving our attention to our concern, to what we're concerned about, and that's where most of our attention is going. We're just watering those plants, and those
Yes.
plants will take over our garden.
Yes.
Whereas if we're watering the plants inside our circle of influence, those are expanding. And the roots of those are taking over the roots of the concern or the weeds or whatever.
Yes.
And so it's beautiful. We just speak the same language. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, it really works in all aspects of life, right? So if we think about where are we stressing out over things we can't change, how do we rephrase that to what we can change? And it's just beautifully implemented right here and now with what we're facing.
yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree. So we're talking about how there's an institutional responsibility or liability as well. And so schools are off. Kids are back from college, things of that sort. But then when we look at people who are getting sick and dying from this, it's people in their 70s, 80s, usually. Like, it's an older population for the most part. What is happening at the institutional level to protect our most vulnerable population?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I'll answer it to the best of my ability. It's not necessarily in my area of influence, but I'm definitely spending a lot of time tuning into doctors who are on the front lines and hearing what they're doing. And I have to say, I think that the medical institutions are responding very quickly, as quickly as they can, in preparing their environments, canceling all elective surgeries, making sure that people are not coming into the hospital that don't need to be in the hospital, and focusing their attention and their equipment where they need to. But this is why I am really feeling adamant about the call to action that I have for the people that I've trained, because we fill a gap here to address the worried well, even the worried weak who are not sick, right? Those who are more susceptible to contracting and getting sick from COVID-19. So what can we do to keep people out of those institutions that are already overwhelmed? And this is where we have personal responsibility that influences that social and institutional responsibility. Let's take care of ourselves to protect all those doctors and nurses and healthcare practitioners that are completely overwhelmed. They don't need us right now. So let's do what we can to support them.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Even more about empowering yourself. This is almost like a responsibility now
Yes.
for us to empower ourselves and to take care of ourselves rather than burdening our healthcare system that absolutely needs to have this space in order
Yes.
to function right now. And my heart goes out to all healthcare workers in hospitals. You guys are doing an amazing job, and so much appreciation for that. And of course, like the biggest deal with all of this is cleaning, washing very well, and making sure the spread of this doesn't happen. So if you are interacting with a vulnerable population, be sure that you are cleaning yourself well. It's actually really, like, respiratory masks are not quite as useful at preventing you from getting it, but they're very useful at helping at ensuring that others don't get it from you. Of
Right. But
course,
let's keep
wash.
the masks to who need them most, right? Like,
Yes,
there's also
exactly.
the run on masks, and I think people have masks that don't necessarily need them. So again, we have a social responsibility here in taking care of ourselves, making sure that those who need equipment get the equipment that they need. And it's easier said than done. We're in a new place, and there's not any script for how we do. I mean, there's a few scripts in the world for people who are there. We're there a little bit before us, but there's a lot we don't know. And I think that's why we have to sit in our circle of influence and do what we can.
So tell me about our circle of influence.
Yeah, so the
Outline-
way,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
You go ahead.
I got excited.
You go.
Okay. So, one of my mental models, I mentioned that there's some frameworks that I like to work in, is one that I call three roots, many branches. And our branches are many. Our branches are all the signs, symptoms, and diagnoses that we can experience in our lifetime. So, for me, Hashimoto's a branch, right? Everything's a branch. COVID-19 is a branch. MS is a branch. All these things, constipation, diarrhea, allergies, all of those things are branches. Our roots are always three. And we can think about this like Cavan's model with the garden. I like to think of the roots as existing in soil, and that soil is our circle of influence. So the three roots that are at play in any chronic condition are the genes, digestion, and inflammation. Those are our three roots that we always want to be addressing in any chronic situation, and they come into play here as well. And around each of those roots is what I'm going to call the circle of influence for each of those roots. So to go quickly, around our genes, we have epigenetic factors, the things that bathe our genes that influence their expression positively or negatively, our food, our movement, our environment, and our mindset. Right? So those are epigenetic factors that influence the expression of those genes. For our digestion, huge part of our immune response, we can think about the mechanical, the chemical, the structural, and the microbial. And right there, there's a lot of things we can be doing to influence our digestion, but also the connections that our digestion has, like with our immune system. So if we think about the structural, we have to think about the mucosa right now, because that's the most susceptible part of our bodies. And what can we do to positively influence the health of our digestive mucosa? Microbial, even though this is a viral infection, we want good microbial terrain to be able to support our immunity. But let's get over to that inflammation area, because that's where I want to really invite us to sit in our biggest circle of influence right now. And inflammation is a natural response of the immune system. We want our system to get inflamed to go clean things up, but then calm down. Those cytokines that everybody's worried about right now, the cytokine storm, cytokines are a natural part of our response to a stressor, and that's good. Like sleep increases our cytokine production. So I've been hearing like freakouts about elderberry because it increases cytokines. Well, if we're the worried well, we want to increase our cytokines and we want them to act normally. If somebody's actually experiencing a cytokine storm, they're in the hospital, and no, nobody's giving them elderberry. So we got to like be real about what we're talking about in those regards and think about it through the lens of who, not just what does it do. Cytokine production is a good thing unless it's not normalizing. So what we can do for our inflammation to make sure that it acts appropriately, cleans up what we want it to, calms down when it's supposed to, is clear, calm, enhance, and modulate. And there's things we can do in each of those areas to sit in our circle of influence. So I'll just start with clear, Cavan, and then, I'll let you interrupt me. But for clear, we want to make sure we're clearing our body waste. So we want to make sure that we're drinking water and tea and broths and vegetable juices. We want to consider how we're eating fiber, make sure we're eliminating and we're pooping, and that we're eating probiotic and prebiotic rich foods as is right for our very own body. But we want to clear our body wastes. That's how we get rid of what we don't need. We want to clear the contaminants, like you were saying, Cavan, wiping down surfaces, washing our hands, covering our mouth with our inner elbow if we cough or sneeze, wiping down grocery carts if we're out publicly shopping. We, of course, want to clear inflammation, and that's going to be unique to all of us. Top inflammatory foods, of course, refined sugar, alcohol, gluten, dairy, whatever is true for you, just think about clearing inflammation, not eating the foods that you know may be triggers for you during this time that we want to sit in our circle of influence, and we want to clear stress and anxiety. Again, easier said than done, but when we step into our circle of influence, it helps us a little bit more, and we can remember to practice whatever we do for stress reducing techniques, whether it's deep breathing or EFT tapping, or connecting with friends and loved ones as we're doing now, or some kind of exercise, which you can do online, sleep, all of these things to clear. Remember, when you just even focus on clearing, you are sitting in your circle of influence against the disease, but also in what you can do to help protect your family and others beyond.
Perfect. So that's the clear, and I just want to say, having all of the models that you think up and you present visually really beautifully, it helps us have awareness about this. Just looking in and be like, look at all the spots where I have influence,
Yes.
and just looking at that and seeing it, and then all of a sudden these ideas pop up. They're like, oh, I can do this and that and this and that, and then like, it's not that scary after all.
Exactly.
I can handle a lot, and then all these actions
Yes.
also come to you that like, I can do that. I should do that. I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
And so it's really powerful. So we talked about inflammation and things we can do for that. In this,
Just in the clear. I mean, there's still more to our circle of influence, right? So there's so much more we can do. It's amazing.
yeah, and then calming. Explain calming real quick.
Yeah, I mean, again, we want to calm internal inflammation. And the way we do that is by looking again at those foods that are contributing to internal inflammation. But we can also eat the rainbow of vegetables, right? All the polyphenols and rich phytonutrients in our produce, which is still left on the shelves because it was growing before. So it's not missing from the grocery stores I'm going to. So this is a great time to increase your phytonutrient content, spicing it up with spices in the kitchen that are anti-inflammatory, like garlic and ginger and turmeric. Those are some of our favorites. Again, making sure to hydrate. This all calms internal inflammation. Calming the nervous system. Again, breathing, sleep, and prioritizing sleep. If you have issues with sleep, trying to do what you know to do to support yourself, and reaching out for some recommendations if you need extra help. I have some good tips on our Instagram page. And also calming the nervous system by tuning into the news that suits you, that feeds you, not the news that takes you into your anxiety producing circle of concern. And calming our lifestyle patterns. So really making time to notice our surroundings. It's spring here, it smells good, it looks beautiful. If we think about what's happening on the planet right now, in terms of waters clearing, birds singing, dolphins doing better, look for the silver linings or the bright side of things that are happening to calm your nervous system and really come into what's possible in terms of the calm area of your circle of influence.
I love that. Watching the news that feels good, that calms your nervous system down. And honestly, as hedonistic or whatever as this sounds, I think that you feeling good, Andrea, all of you feeling good
Yes.
is the most important thing. Because when we're feeling good, we do good. When
Yes.
we're not, when we're scared, that's when we do some really irrational, and people are not at their best when they're not feeling good. So
Yeah.
take care of yourself. And we talked a little bit about the sensory diet in prior interviews, and our sensory diet is the shows we watch, the movies we watch, the podcasts we listen to, the news we watch. and then our news feed, you know, and we have control over that and choosing what our sensory diet is, because our senses demand our attention. And
Absolutely.
as I was saying, our attention is the currency of our neurology, which makes it the currency of everything. So, what is your sensory diet? What are you paying the priceless gift of your attention to? So, I really appreciate that. Looking
Yeah.
at news that feels good.
I think it's so important what you just said, Kevin. I just want to underscore it because this goes for people too. If you're spending time with people who are feeding your anxiety, I know that I live a stressful life because I own a business and I have a big school and we're serving a lot of people, right? And I've been a single mom because of the death of my husband 18 years ago. So there's stress in my life. And because of that, I'm very acutely aware of my own stress response. I can tell if I'm watching or listening to something and my heart rate goes up and I can't process it. I can tell that, and I will stop watching, listening, whatever it is happening. I will walk away from a conversation. I will disengage because I know it's my health and sanity, and I need to be well. And that's more important now than ever. I mean, I'll be watching a movie with my boyfriend and be like, I can't watch anymore. And it's like, wait, there's like 15, I'm done. Like, I can't, I can tell my nervous system is too jacked up and I'm not going to be able to calm it down. So my invitation to you is tune in to that sensitivity. If you find you're getting worked up and you're in that, that's your circle of concern. We need to come back to our circle of influence. I need to go for a walk. I need to step away. I need to listen to some music and dance really hard. Whatever it is, we do have some influence over that state.
You never cease to amaze me with every bit of your life that you just rock, you know.
Oh, thank
um
you, Kevin.
Thank you, thank you. I mean, yeah, you are under a tremendous round of stress all the times, and it's like yeah, another day in the life, like no big deal. Like you got this, and that's because you found what works. You've set up these tools. You look at what's going to serve you, and you let the stuff that isn't. It's not like you ignore it. You're just like, okay, that's not, I'm not gonna watch that, you know?
Yeah,
And I'm gonna move on with what I can do and help people from where I sit. And you
I
help
have to
me.
learn that lesson every day, though, Kevin. I'm
Yeah.
not like, there's no, like, it's like every day I'm like, what? Okay, no, not in my circle of influence, right? So this is it's a practice where we know ourselves and respond to ourselves. So I just want to say, like, it happens all the time, and it's our reaction and change, and also like just not falling into that ditch for too long. So as soon as I see the ditch, now I know how to walk around the ditch. But the ditches come up, right? All the time.
Totally. Totally. Well, yeah, you put together a, first of all, if you want to learn more about Andrea, I wrote an article about her at feedtobrain.com/FNL, Functional Nutrition Lab. You can go there and read about how we met and how we've been working together and just been a part of each other's life since then. And you also created a circle of influence handout that
Yes.
people can grab. Where can they get that?
Yeah, if you head over to fxnutrition.com/COVID19 dash tips. So it's COVID-19 with no dash, COVID-19 dash tips. You can get that circle of influence where I will also talk about enhance, where we do look at supplements. I know that that's a big conversation right now, but there's other ways to support your immune system. We don't want to, as you and I were talking about, Kevin, people are like drinking wine and eating sugar and then taking high doses of vitamins. That is not where we sit in our circle of influence. So get your hands on that handout. If that's of interest to you, you'll learn about the enhance and the modulate circles of influence that are that complete that area. And so good to be in conversation with you, Kevin, and with your community.
Always, always is. Thank you so much, Andrea.
Thank
Um,
you.
man, I don't know what to say, but thank you very, very much. So appreciated, and we also, yeah, I want to let the audience know we also recorded the podcast
You
not
did.
too long ago, and then I was on your podcast as well. I actually was hosting for the
Yeah.
15 Matrix, and that was cool. People can find that, and I think
It's 15-minute matrix, 15minute matrix.com/. Do you know if it's
Cabin.
cabin? I don't know.
Cabin. Yeah.
Probably. Yeah,
Yeah.
there, that leads to our episode. Yeah. Awesome.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, and
Yeah.
hope this helps for everybody out there. And leave any comments below with any questions, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Kevin.
Cheers.